cold never bothered me anyway.
What's happening?
What's up, everybody? Brian Tong here, and if you're new here, this is a channel for all things tech, geek, and culture, and I just love it when a story like this covers all three of them, because if you're a Disney fan, if you're a Frozen fan, or a tech fan, I think you're going to love this, because I recently got exclusive access from Disney Animation to talk about their team and how they created what they call a time machine to build one specific scene for Frozen's Once Upon a Snowman short that's featuring Olaf, and you can watch it right now on Disney+. So this is a real deep dive. We're going to talk to the directors and team members about how they came up with the idea and concept, the storytelling involved, and then the technical aspects of how they built a PC to mimic a 6.5-year-old system like the ones used to create the original Frozen movie just for this animated short. Plus, there's a scoop in here about Frozen 2 that you have never heard before. And I also hope that this gives you more appreciation of just how talented these people are and how much work goes into it. This, again, is an exclusive story that you will not find anywhere else, so enjoy. How did this project come about? You know, whose idea bouncing off each other? Where did this originate from? We know the Frozen franchise is huge, but how did this all start?
Yeah, it started back in 2012. I started at Disney in October 2012 in their training program. And, you know, I have a mentor and you do all these training exercises. And my first film to roll onto after training was Frozen. And, you know, I rolled on there as a crowds animator, apprentice animator. And as I started on the show, they were animating Let It Go, which, you know, turned out to be a pretty big hit. And I remember one of the first shots I saw was from an animator named Chad Sellers, and it's Elsa building Olaf. And I remember watching the show. I remember very clearly watching it and thinking, like, Elsa just created life, and then she just walks away and keeps singing. She like created life for the first time, and then she's gone. So that was the incarnation of the idea back in like end of 2012, early 2013. And I just kind of like started developing this origin story of Olaf. And at the time it was all about, you know, Olaf finding his nose. You know, some of the beats were there of like stumbling on Oaken's cabin, but it always ended with, you know, the scene in the movie where he meets Anna, Kristoff, and Sven and gets his carrot nose. So I had this idea for years, 6 or 7 years. I would pick it up every now and again and just like develop it for a book series. And then I thought, you know, maybe a short, maybe it could happen. And then Disney Plus came around, and finally it was like, oh, here's a perfect platform for this. So when Disney Plus came around, I was supervising Olaf from Frozen 2 to bring it kind of full circle. And I had started working with Dan, you know, at the start of Frozen 2 when he was boarding some of the great Olaf scenes and Gale stuff. And yeah, Dan, you pick it up from there.
Yeah, when I came on to co-direct with Trent, I had boarded the Olaf song in Frozen 2 and had a ball doing that. And actually I did 2 Olaf songs in that, and then they went with the second one. There originally was a I don't know if anyone's supposed to.
Wait, no. This is interesting theater. These are nuggets. It's not like you're spoiling anything, but
no.
Okay, wait. Rewind a little bit, just because that's kind of interesting. The process. This is the creative process, guys.
Yes, this is the creative process. What happened was there was an original Olaf song for Frozen 2, but then our story changed, and so the song didn't work anymore. And I had boarded that song. And then when the story changed, Olaf got a different song, and they said, "Well, you did a good job on that first one. Do the second one," and that became When I'm Older. So I got to do that. So I spent a bunch of time with Olaf. So Jennifer Lee asked me if I would come on and co-direct with Trent and try to work on the story and take all the work that he had done over the years and see if I could and add any pixie dust of my own. And so the story evolved from not only Olaf just trying to find a nose, but also trying to work out who he is and what his identity is and things like that. So he was looking for a nose, but he was also trying to remember his name and what's he doing here and all that stuff. So
So this is interesting. In the creative process, things happen. Just, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but was that actual song not only storyboarded, but actually recorded? Right? Was there a recording of it, or it was a concept, that song that that shall not be named, that doesn't
Right.
exist, but exists, but doesn't exist?
Josh Gad did not record that, but Bobby Lopez did. So when I boarded it, it was his temp track, and it was really fun. And I was a little bit bummed that the story changed, but it didn't work anymore because the story changed. So, but yeah.
Okay, so in case you didn't catch that, there was a song intended for Frozen 2 that was part of the movie and then was taken out of the movie for story reasons. It had a name. Trent and Dan wouldn't tell it to me, but this is the first time that we've ever heard publicly that an additional song even existed for Frozen 2, and it was actually made, but it never saw the light of day. I've talked to a lot of the technical team, and we know that Once Upon a Snowman refers back to the first Frozen. So you guys are coming up and brainstorming like, hey, we need to pull that first clip. But technically they were like, okay, we got to figure out how we bring that look of Frozen 1 from that scene and let it go, and then bridge it with the new technology. Were you guys just like, this is Disney, this is how we do, we're going to get it done? Or were there any apprehensions about just this thinking of kind of doing something like that?
Well, you know, I'll bring this up, and then I'd love to hear what Dan has to say too, because that shot at the beginning of Elsa building Olaf was really important from the very start for us. It was like we are revealing a different perspective. So we're literally using that camera and the language to show that perspective. So we definitely fought for, like, if we want to spend our time and resources on something, we would love to be able to do this shot because it does set the tone for the whole short.
We really wanted to hit the ground running. And if you start with Let It Go, everybody who's seen Frozen, like, they probably know that moment better than any other moment. So you want to just drop them right into the story, and they know exactly where you are, what's happening, and all that. But then we wanted to then turn the camera and be like, okay, now we're going behind the curtain, and now we're going to look at what's over on this. So that Trent had it in 2012, like, he started with that shot, and I can't imagine starting anywhere else. Like, it's perfect to start right there. So we had to figure out technologically how to make that happen.
There were a couple of different ways to go to basically extend that shot. Because the data was so old, and it experiences what we call data rot, which means obviously the files are still on disk, but we had changed our renderer. Frozen 1 was the last film that we created using RenderMan. And then from Big Hero 6 onward, we had an in-house renderer, global illumination renderer, called Hyperion. So just that on its own was like, okay, well, that's an interesting problem to solve. What we had done for Frozen 2 is we refactored, basically recreated Anna, Elsa, Kristoff, all of the original characters from the first movie, because it was happening a few years later. Also, our rig technology had gotten much, much better, how the animators are interacting with the characters. And just the look of everything, we end up with this fantastic, richer look through Hyperion than we were getting 6 years ago using RenderMan. So just the talent of the crew had evolved. The rigs were better to work with. So that alone is a reason to recreate the characters, but also Frozen 2 was happening, in Frozen time. It was a number of years later. So the girls had gone from their late teens into their early 20s. And we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that. So the angles of their face are just slightly sharper. Their character models changed. Like I said, their rigs changed, their grooms, we got much better at, and faster and more efficient at putting controls in to do our hair and claw simulations. So we thought, okay, well, we probably have to go through, and I guess for this one shot, we have to recreate Elsa in her coronation outfit that she's wearing during Let It Go in the first movie.
The question was asked, can we do this? Can we build a machine that basically had all the software, the same operating system that we had 6 years before, and recreate this shot? So then I looked back at the operating system. We found that we were able to install that operating system on a modern computer, so that the hardware was not incompatible. So I was able to, in relatively short order, with the help of our systems people, get a machine with the old operating system. All it takes is for me to type a command in a Unix shell, and it puts me in the environment with all the software. I could do that on the machine, and I was able to pull up a shot from the first Frozen, this shot, and do a render. And that all just worked out of the box.
The machine that Disney Animation built was affectionately called the Time Machine by the team, and it was a PC loaded with the software and an OS 6.5 years old. Now, Disney told me that their Time Machine was a Dell Precision T7600 desktop PC with an Intel Xeon E5 2680 2.7 gigahertz processor. It had 16 cores, 128 gigs of RAM, and used an NVIDIA Quadro K5000 graphics card. Now, a fun fact about the Time Machine is that since there was only one Time Machine in the entire building, all the Disney artists, animators, special effects, and lighting team members, they had to reserve time to use this one machine for that one shot.
So that was a machine for people to do their interactive work, but it was only 16 cores. And when we needed to do renders, we have a whole render farm that we use for our movies. But we couldn't just submit these to the existing render farm because, again, they were all on the modern operating system that the old toolset would not run on. So we had 3 machines in the render farm switch back to the old operating system.
Wow.
Each of those had 64 cores. So that was a total of 192 cores on our farm that we had reserved for the shot, which was plenty.
The machines in Disney Animation's render farms are made for pure processing power to render out all of their videos. Now, Disney told me each rendering machine is equipped with an Intel Xeon E5 2697A 2.6 gigahertz processor. They are 64-core machines with 256 gigs of RAM each and a basic video card. Now, these 3 machines, 192 cores combined, allocated for just this single shot in Once Upon a Snowman, make up less than 1% of their entire render farm. So if you do the math, they have, over 300 machines dedicated to their render farm. And their artists have access to all of that rendering power.
Our artists are also very creative. And for example, in technical animation, where they do hair and cloth sim, and they also do mesh cleanup, they really like their modern tools. Fortunately, our geometry file format had not changed significantly in the 6 years. So they took the animation on that Time Machine, they baked out the geometry. They then went to their desktop machine that was running, modern operating system, modern software, and they were able to load up that geometry, do a bunch of their work on it, save it out, export it, and then go back to the Time Machine and re-import it.
Luckily for me, I only supervised it. I didn't actually like the shot. So from a supervision standpoint, nothing changed. But I will tell you, I worked closely with the artist. His name is Richard Gouge, who actually lit the shot. So it has been a while, and we talked about this all the time. He had to go back and kind of relearn a lot of the techniques that we use in the old RenderMan, because we had, and I'm going to say some technical stuff, we had shadow maps and point clouds, filtered point clouds and things like that, which our GI renderer Hyperion doesn't have. so there were particular ways of setting up shots back in the day. So we had to go back. He had to. Luckily, we had all of this online. We had a lot of documentation, a lot of videos that we had done for training ourselves at that time. So he had to go back and relearn how to light in the old way and jog his memory quite a bit. The one challenge I would say was just again with the making sure we are using the right techniques, but in a way upgrading the look a little bit so that when we go to the Hyperion shots, it's not such a change. So there were some subtle things that Richard Gouge did with how, ambient occlusion worked on Olaf and such, so that when we went to the Hyperion Olaf, he didn't look too different. I think that was kind of a challenge, making that transition not too apparent. So he had to massage how we lit, upgrading the lighting to how we do it today a little bit, but still in the older tool set.
That camera where she builds Olaf, it already has a natural right to left rotation on it. So it just made sense to just keep it going. It was already set up to do that. We just needed to add 200 frames.
And then it was a matter of like, I wanted in that shot when you go on to Olaf to have him like kind of move a little bit, rocking back and forth to her song, just to let us know that there was already life there. Because my fear is when she lets go of her cape and it knocks him off the mountain, and then he comes, like, I didn't want it to be like, oh, that's the cape of life or something. Like I wanted it to, like, he's already got some life in him before that happens. But it was we went a little bit back and forth about using the actual footage from Frozen of Elsa continuing on with her song and stuff. But I think that was the best way to go. Just like you're still in that moment. We're still in that exact same place.
By the way, that's me and Dan's next short, The Cape of Life.
The Cape of Life. Look, Disney Plus, there's abundance of opportunities for The Cape of Life.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
who knows
the
where
Cape
it'll
Chronicles.
take you.
At the very start of the process, when Dan first came on board, if there were no fights then, but it was, I pitched him the short where it was at, and it was, pretty rudimentary. It was like some basic beats and some ideas, and gave it to Dan and said, why don't you sit with it for a week? I'll stay out of your way, and think about it and come back at me. You have free reign to just say, I don't like this, and this, or I think we should do something different. So Dan came back with like some great ideas. I remember like the first one was the stereoscope, introducing summer. Like I thought that was such a smart way to get Olaf thinking about summer and so fun. And then the other big idea was I had a fish on Olaf's face for, instead of a sausage, it was a fish. And Dan, you can talk about your love of
Well, and Trent even did a cute little run cycle with Olaf running along with this fish on his face. And it was like, it was pretty odd looking, like because that has to be on his face, a sausage or a fish, it has to be on his face for a good percentage of the short. Like, and so to have that on his face, it was a little distracting. And I thought, on one story wise, I'm not sure Olaf would leave Oakens with a fish on his face and be happy with that as a nose. Like he knows that he had a carrot. And so I'm not sure that he would be satisfied with a fish. That seems like a pretty big leap for me. And so coming up with the sausage, and then it's a summer sausage. And because he's obsessed with summer, like all those pieces started falling into place. And I was also thinking that if Olaf were being chased by cats and with a fish on his face, that story math really adds up. But since it's wolves, meat made more sense. Like I buy that they want meat more than they would want a fish. So kind of putting those pieces together and stuff. But I mean, just, Trent coming up with the idea of somebody chasing him for the thing that he has on his face, like that was Trent. Like, and so you just kind of, that's what you do in the story room, is you just build off of each other's ideas and make it stronger and stronger and stronger. And having a great place to start with, thanks to Trent, like we had such a great foundation.
Quick question, personal curiosity, was the fish face forward for the nose, or was it the fish tail for the nose?
That's a great.
What a good
This
question.
is why I do this.
Great question. Yeah. So it was originally supposed to be a lutefisk because we see the lutefisk in the first movie, right? We see the jar of lutefisk.
Skirt! Hold up. I know what you're wondering right now. What is lutefisk? Well, it's what's in the jar. It's a traditional dish in Norway, Sweden, and parts of Finland. It's typically made from dried and salted whitefish, pickled in lye, and it's gelatinous in texture after being rehydrated for days prior to eating. Some people describe it like a warm jellyfish. You're welcome. Now back to Trent and Dan.
But when I was doing that run cycle Dan just mentioned, I only had salmon. I only had a rig that was a salmon, so it was a big, long, floppy fish. But it was always eyes forward, and the flopping is a lot. But having to look at 4 eyeballs, I think, is a lot too.
It's kind of. I mean, thank goodness for Dan.
Well, we still have the moment when Oaken puts the fish on his face, and he immediately like, well, so we still have that moment. The beat that it is. Look at there. It's the toy has got.
You mean I didn't notice any of those Olafs in the background when we started the video conference?
Yeah, they slowly reveal themselves. Yeah, I mean, Disney Consumer Products seems to have agreed with me.
You know what? For a beat, for a gag, it's great. For a good percentage of the movie, him running around with the fish on his face,
not as good.
I stand by my.
No, honestly, it was such a that early story process of Dan and I working together for the first month. I was so happy to have fresh eyes on this project because it had been just me on it for 6 or 7 years, and then Jen Lee looking at it when I pitched it to her. So the fresh eyes were great, the new ideas, the fresh take, and I mean, story and making film's never easy, but this process at the start just felt easy. It was like Dan and I got along well. We riffed off each other's ideas, and we let the best ideas kind of rise to the top.
The other question is, you guys have kind of mentioned here, really cool, and fans love this stuff, 2 Easter eggs, okay? A potential Olaf song not used, fish nose, sausage. Is there any other Easter egg inside this? Because again, you guys did the story. Is there another Easter egg or maybe a call out? How about this? If it's really hidden, maybe a hint or something? Because I know you guys hide stuff in things all the time too.
Well, they're pretty obvious in the short. I mean, they are, because we intertwine with the original movie. There's like Anna's dress and the wolf chase, all that stuff. But if you do look in the stereoscope, you will see summer cards that showcase some of our other films. What do you think, Dan? Anything else stand out?
Well, people really seem to be getting a kick out of seeing what happened to Anna's coronation dress when she leaves Oaken's, she's in a whole new outfit. She left her coronation dress in there, and now we see that he's trying to resell it. People seem to enjoy that.
And that's a good one to mention too. Like if we're talking about technology, because just like that intro shot we talked about at the beginning with the rotating camera, and Anna's dress and Kristoff's outfit, and bringing all those elements back, including Oaken's cabin. We depend on the technology folks that you're talking to, like Steve, like Mark, like Moet. They kind of all make that possible. Dan and I say we really love this for the story, and they find a way to bring it back. From 2012 to 2019. I guess we made it 18.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any challenge or any part of this short that was specifically challenging for you, or maybe an ask for the team that ended up being more challenging than you maybe thought it would? Like, you guys are coming up with these ideas, you have an ask, but maybe it doesn't hit you until they say, okay, this is going to take a lot longer than we thought, or because you had kind of worked in the Frozen world so much, there was really not too much to ask?
Yeah, there were some things that jumped to mind, Brian, like the snow. We hadn't done snow in a couple of years at the studio, so bringing that technology back to the forefront. Even like the chase, I mean, that's a big sequence with a lot of wolves, a lot of characters, trying to do that efficiently. So there were little challenges, but really, I mean, our team was so good. We had leadership roll on from Frozen 2, so everybody knew their stuff so well. We had the head of layout and the head of animation, and and everyone kind of like transferring over. So yeah, that part was pretty seamless.
When they hear what the story is, I think they get a kick out of rising to the occasion and figuring it out, like all the departments, effects and layout and animation and all that, like, and they're like, okay, and they're listening to your notes and what you're asking for. But they never, at least for me, they never like said, oh man, I don't know if we're not going to be able to, like, there wasn't a lot of that. They just get in there and they figure it out, and then they knock your socks off with what they're presenting to you, and it looks better than you ever. But I mean, the shot where Olaf is walking up to Oaken's cabin, and the way that he's kind of trudging through the snow, and I just, like, the first time I saw that, I'm just like, oh my God, it's beautiful, it's charming, it feels real, like I can feel that snow and hear that crunch, and it's unreal to me how everybody just rises the occasion and they all want to make the best thing possible. And or when people are all together on the same page like that.
It's so true.
Cold never bothered me anyway.
What's happening?
So that's how Disney Animation made a time machine for a scene in Frozen's Once Upon a Snowman. Now, I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes video. It was just really great to meet the creative geniuses behind this animated short, and then so many other Disney movies that you've already seen and will see. Again, you will not find this story anywhere else, so big thanks to Disney Animation for the exclusive access. And if you'd like to see more content like this and more in the tech, geek, and culture space, give me that thumbs up, subs up, and hit that notification bell, ding, to get my latest videos when they drop. You can also check out the making of Frozen 2 that I did a while back if you want to see some other great behind the scenes of that movie as well. So thanks so much for watching. I'm Brian Tong. Take care now, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love.